Outrage, fear, and determination collided in Chinatown this weekend as New Yorkers put their bodies on the line to stop a federal immigration operation, and vowed that this was only the beginning of their resistance. Immigrant rights organizers spent Sunday urging New Yorkers to keep standing up to federal immigration enforcement, less than 24 hours after demonstrators and police violently clashed during an attempt to block Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) activity in Manhattan's Chinatown. They framed the moment not as an isolated incident, but as part of a broader, ongoing struggle over what kind of city New York chooses to be. Advocates also publicly pressed NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch to drop all charges against those arrested during Saturday's confrontations, arguing that people were criminalized simply for defending their neighbors. Police officials said that multiple individuals were taken into custody after protesters blocked the street and several exits and allegedly threw debris, though they have not yet shared how many people were arrested or what specific charges they face. Requests for comment from City Hall sent over the weekend had not received a response by Sunday. At a gathering near Howard Street and Center Street on Sunday, public advocate Jumaane urged supporters to continue resisting immigration crackdowns, but to do so strategically and without violence. He stressed that confrontations that turn chaotic can give authorities a pretext to escalate force and repression, and he encouraged people to remain focused on protection, not provocation. The rally took place on the very streets where, just one day earlier, crowds had assembled to disrupt what many believed would be an immigration raid. On Saturday, demonstrators blocked a one-way street by piling garbage to prevent vehicles from exiting a garage where ICE agents were believed to be stationed. As tension rose, police eventually set up barricades and engaged physically with the crowd, leading to clashes that left several people shaken and furious. Supporters described the blockade as an act of community defense, while critics may see it as a deliberate escalation, raising a hard question. Where is the line between civil disobedience and unacceptable disruption? Murad Awawdeh, executive director of the New York Immigration Coalition, shared emotional testimony at Sunday's rally, saying that some protesters were pepper-sprayed seemingly at random and others were violently thrown to the ground. He questioned why such force was used in a city that has called itself a sanctuary for decades, emphasizing that New York's identity is inseparable from the immigrants who live, work, and build their lives there. In his view, everything people celebrate about New York, its culture, food, language, and energy, is directly tied to the communities that are now under threat. New York City's sanctuary laws limit direct cooperation between local authorities and federal immigration agencies, aiming to protect undocumented residents from routine detention and deportation. However, the NYPD often still plays a role around immigration operations, especially when there are protests, public safety concerns, or street blockages connected to ICE activity. This tension creates a gray area. Officially, the city distances itself from federal enforcement, but on the ground, local police frequently end up entangled in the same operations. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, released a statement defending its actions and sharply criticizing the demonstrators. The agency said it contacted the NYPD on Saturday after agitators, wearing backpacks, masks, and goggles appeared to block the garage where ICE was located, and after hundreds of violent rioters arrived. DHS also accused those who shared ICE officers' locations on social media of endangering federal agents, raising a thorny debate about whether public transparency is a necessary tool for community defense or a reckless act that puts individuals at risk. From the rally stage, Williams pushed back on the idea that New Yorkers should apologize for resisting. He declared that New Yorkers would continue to protect one another and urged residents to understand that these kinds of confrontations are likely to keep happening as long as federal policies target immigrant communities. He praised those who had shown up, often at short notice, whenever ICE agents appeared, saying that their willingness to act was a powerful statement of shared responsibility and moral courage. Immigrant advocacy groups said that Saturday's events highlighted a surge in public interest and participation in their work. Organizers reported that community members are not only showing up to protests but also signing up for trainings, legal support efforts, and rapid response networks at levels that exceed what many groups can currently accommodate. For them, this moment is not just about a single raid, but about building longer-term infrastructure to resist deportations and protect vulnerable neighbors. Hannah Stoss, an organizer with the group Hands Off NYC, explained that her organization has even had to turn people away from trainings because demand is so high. She said that when large crowds gather around heavily armed federal agents, those agents often become noticeably more cautious. In her words, even officers who appear imposing and powerful, with weapons, badges, and authority, can lose confidence when they realize they're outnumbered by determined community members. But here's where it gets controversial. Does this kind of public pressure keep people safe, or risk making encounters more volatile? The apparent Chinatown operation seemed poised to follow an earlier federal action in the same neighborhood in October, when authorities reported detaining more than a dozen people during a crackdown they described as targeting counterfeiters. That earlier raid sparked significant backlash and drew crowds of protesters and outraged bystanders who questioned whether the enforcement was truly about fake goods, or primarily about immigration status. Many residents felt that the operation blurred the line between criminal investigation and immigration policing. This most recent incident also unfolded just over a week after Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, widely known for confronting President Donald Trump's border czar Tom Homan at the state capitol in March, had an unexpectedly friendly meeting with Trump at the White House. In the past, Mamdani had called the October Chinatown raid an abuse of federal authority, arguing it was driven more by fear, politics, and intimidation than by genuine concern for public safety or justice. That contrast, a cordial meeting with Trump followed by another controversial enforcement action in Chinatown, may fuel speculation about how much local leaders can or will actually push back against federal strategies. DHS did not clarify in its statement whether additional immigration operations in Chinatown are planned, leaving residents and advocates uncertain about what might come next. That uncertainty can be deeply destabilizing for families who worry that a normal day at work, school, or the market could suddenly turn into a life-altering encounter with immigration authorities. And this is the part most people miss. For many, the real impact is not just about arrests. It's about living with constant fear that loved ones could vanish into the system with little warning. Awawdeh praised Saturday's mobilization as a moment when New Yorkers stepped up to defend one another. He emphasized that community members worked together to ensure that no one was quietly taken away or disappeared from their family and neighborhood without witnesses or support. To him and many others, that kind of solidarity is both a moral obligation and a practical strategy to limit harm when federal agents show up. So here's the question that could divide opinions. Are these protests a necessary form of community self-defense in the face of aggressive immigration enforcement? Or are they crossing a line by obstructing federal operations and putting people, on both sides, in danger? Do you think New York should double down on its sanctuary commitments, even if it means more clashes like the one in Chinatown? Or should there be stricter limits on how far protesters can go? Share where you stand. Do you side more with the protesters who say they are protecting their neighbors, or with the officials who argue that enforcement and order must come first, and why?